Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena where the Lakers beat the Golden State Warriors 120 to 112. They improved to 3-0 against the Warriors this season. They improved to 30-19 overall. They have won 4 straight games. 10 of 12 are playing, in my opinion, their best basketball of the season right now. Huge game for LeBron James. Joins the 40-40 club with Michael Jordan as the only 2 players in NBA history to be 40 years old or older and score 40 or more points in a game. LeBron drops 42, 17, and 8. This might have been his best game of the season, which is saying something. That's a high bar. 1 steal, 1 block. Incredible performance from LeBron. Had that sequence where he hit 3 straight threes, each one progressively deeper, 26 feet, 27 feet, then 30 feet, basically a logo shot. And just insane stuff from a 40-year-old LeBron James that does not look it at all. Looks smack dab at his prime still, which is just a crazy thing to be saying. But before we get into the rest of tonight's show, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications so you never miss a live stream or a video, and make sure you like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the late night gang. Zay got us started with the first comment. Seeing a lot of yo-yos. Danny, Chris, WTF dude, Choco Thunder, Cozy Newton, Jake from State Farm, Natalia. Natalia says, saw Jovan at the game. He's taller than Reeves. Okay. I will take it. I believe that's true, but I will take it. Yeah, shout out to everyone right now in the chat. Super late. Sometimes post game takes a while. I got to transcribe. I got to write. But as Hako says, yo, 10 streams in 5 days. LFG. Man, I am. Tonight's going to be an adventure. I'm not quite sure. My mental capacity right now, my mental bandwidth, my processing skills, are the opposite of LeBron and Luka when they're out there. The way they see process things, like I'm the exact opposite right now. I'm mentally fried. I need like 12 hours of sleep that I'm not going to get. But Jay says, yo, I'll keep it under 3 hours tonight. It's pretty late already. I'm going to keep it to an hour tonight because in all seriousness, like I still have a little bit of writing to do, and I'm super tired. This is my second stream of the day, but 3rd stream in the last 24 hours. And then I'm also recording a podcast tomorrow with Cranjis to break down the Luka trade, Mark Williams, LA's offense, what their ceiling is. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be coming out in the afternoon. Mr. Matsuda says, hit the like button. Yes, if you are watching right now, please hit that like button. So let's get into some of the takeaways. Then we will get into the super chats and all of your questions. So overarching takeaway of the game for me is, as I said in the intro, I think LA is playing their best basketball of the season right now. They have won 10 of 12 games, and looking at the schedule, these have been a lot of quality wins. They beat the Warriors twice. They beat the Celtics. They beat the Knicks. They beat the Clippers. Multiple of those games were on the road. They beat the Heat. They had the comeback win against the Heat. They barely survived without AD against the Nets, but like overall during the stretch, the Lakers have been playing their best and most consistent stretch of just two-way basketball all season. They've had blowout wins. They've had close wins. They've weathered adversity, both in terms of making trades, but also injuries and just all these different circumstances. The Grammy trip, they go 5-1 on the Grammy trip. Like a lot is just going right for the Lakers right now, and that's before Luka Doncic or Mark Williams has even made their Laker debut yet, and I will touch on that a little bit later in my takeaways. But I'm going to keep this one brief just because I think like we've kind of talked a lot about it with the Knicks win, with the Clippers win, and with this win now, where it just feels like the Lakers are really starting to peak. And I think adding again a Luka Doncic into this offense and this team, and a Mark Williams who can do a lot of what Jackson Hayes can do, but at a higher level. I just think that the ceiling with this group is very, very high. And I think that they're in a great position right now. So I just think that the vibes are good. Got some good post-game comments from LeBron about Luka, about Mark Williams. We learned some new intel on Mark Williams that I will be sharing. And just overall, I think things are great in Lakerland right now. And I think that's my biggest takeaway overall. Stat of the night. Could have gone in a lot of ways. I will give 2 honorable mentions. One, LeBron James scoring 42 points at 40 years old, joining the 40-40 club. And the other one being LA having 35 fast break points tonight. And they didn't even do it because 9 steals is a good number, but it's not like a crazy number. And Golden State only had 12 turnovers, leading to 18 Lakers points. But they just played with a certain pace and verve, and got out in transition and a lot of hit ahead passes, some cherry picking, some leak outs, but like all the points count the same, right? So with LeBron or Jackson or different guys, like they just did a really good job of getting out in transition, getting ahead of the Warriors defense, and really capitalizing on that. But my stat of the night is going to be Jared Vanderbilt. Grabbing 14 rebounds in less than 21 minutes. And this tonight, to me, was like the closest Vando has looked to being himself. And I think, of course, it's been a process when you come back from double foot surgery and missing nearly a year of basketball, that there's going to be a bit of a ramp up process, and you just get, becoming more comfortable and just feeling more comfortable out there physically, and regaining your confidence in your legs and your cardio and all that stuff. Like there's so many factors that go into a player returning from an injury. And even within all that, Vando's been on a minutes restriction and he still looked pretty good overall. But I thought tonight, from an athleticism and energy and physicality standpoint, he set an incredible tone. Really, he and LeBron, I mean, they had 31 of the Lakers' 47 rebounds, and it showed an ability to play smaller that we have seen from this group, in the Knicks game and in the Clippers game. But they did it against a team that excels in small ball and really went small to start the third quarter. They benched Quinton Post and went with Draymond at the 5. And that gave the Lakers a lot of problems defensively. But they weathered that storm. I mean, Golden State made like multiple runs in the third and fourth quarters. LA always was able to keep them at bay. I don't think they ever got closer than about 6 points. So they quickly cut down that 20-point halftime lead. And then, it was more of a chess match in the second half. But I thought Vando was just a big stabilizing force for LA defensively, both with the rebounding, with the switchability, with the versatility as a roamer, as a helper. Like I just thought Vando was awesome tonight. And this, to me, both showed his impact and importance for this group, but also, like he's still not even fully back to being himself, but he is incrementally getting closer. And that player is just a good, valuable player. And even with his flaws and limitations, I think the Lakers have used him in smart ways, and his lack of gravity. There's been some games or stretches where it has hurt them, but tonight was just not one of them. And I think that's an encouraging sign. And then takeaway number 1 is going to be new Mark Williams intel. So we, the beat reporters, there was a group of about 5 of us, met with Rob Pelinka before the game to talk about the Mark Williams trade. And it was an embargoed interview because the trade had not become official yet. It didn't become official until 9:45 Pacific time. So we did the interview under the agreement that we were not going to tweet anything, post anything, write anything until the trade was official in terms of what Rob said about the trade. So we talked to him for about 10 minutes pregame, and there's some very insightful stuff into the process as to how the Lakers landed Mark Williams. So according to Pelinka, right after the Luka Doncic press conference, and remember at the end, he was asked about what potential move, follow-up move they could do, what they're looking for on the trade market. And then once he named centers, then there's a follow-up as to what type of center. And he started listing athletic, mobile, versatile, lob threat, like that type of player. Charlotte, among other teams, reached out to the Lakers and started to ask like what they would be willing to give up for certain players. And they brought up Mark Williams, and Mark Williams was not a guy that was really out in the trade ether, like in having like I know for myself firsthand, but also like you didn't see his name in a lot of trade rumors or a lot of speculation about where, what Charlotte could be doing. It was like once they traded Nick Richards, Mark Williams was viewed as more of a keeper. And the Lakers, according to Pelinka, viewed it in a similar way. They didn't think he was available. But then once they started talking to the Hornets, they brought up the possibility of Mark Williams, and then the Hornets liked Dalton Connect going back to the draft, and they negotiated this trade in between the time right after the Luka Doncic press conference, which was Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. It finished at 9:30 a.m. So between 9:30 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday the 4th and Wednesday night at whenever the trade dropped, like 9:15, I want to say Pacific time, 9:15 p.m. Pacific time. Within that like 36-hour span, or technically less than 36 hours, because obviously he didn't take the call like right after 9:30. Basically within a 36-hour span, the Lakers agreed, like found out about Mark Williams' availability, negotiated it, and agreed to the deal and ironed it all out within that span. And Mark Williams was the exact type of big that Luka referenced to Rob when they had their initial conversation on Monday. But when Luka got to the practice facility for the first time and got his tour and all that stuff, got his physical, he met with Rob in his office, and they went through the short and long-term vision of the roster. And he mentioned that in Dallas, he had a lot of success with guys like Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, Dwight Powell, and that he likes that vertical lob threat, athletic big. So of course Jackson fits that mold, but not as a starter. So they went out and got Mark Williams, and we asked a series of questions because one question was about sort of the lack of clarity as to like which way the Lakers were going to go. Were they going to use the picks? Were they not going to use the picks? Were they going to maybe do like a half measure? And Rob said ultimately he felt like with Luka and with LeBron, they have two top 10 guys, and he felt like the right trade materialized with Mark Williams, and they were willing to put the rest of, basically the rest of their draft capital on the table to get him because he filled a need. It was also the type of player that Luka wanted to play with. So that I thought that was interesting. It's kind of like a sliding doors situation to an extent, because I do wonder, like, I think AD is a top 10 player. So maybe they still kind of approach it as aggressively if they don't make the Luka trade. But I almost kind of, reading between the lines, it was almost like, because we got Luka and because we feel like our duo is even better than it was previously, we now have this glaring hole at center. Like, we needed to make that up and be a little bit more aggressive. So he actually compared it to the housing market, which is not the first time he's made a housing market analogy with the trade deadline. But he basically said, like, right now in the housing market, prices are insane. But if you really need a house and you're looking for a house, you find the one you want, you might have to overpay for it. But if you get the house that you want, you could be willing, you're willing to do that, right? So that was basically how he felt about Mark Williams. Of this was a guy not even really on their radar because they didn't think he was available. They didn't think they could get him. And then once Charlotte, basically, I mean, it's interesting because it's very similar to the Dallas situation where Dallas came to them inquiring about Luka and kind of spitballing that, and then they negotiated for almost a month. And this was a much quicker process, but a similar thing where Charlotte looked at the Lakers' public need for a center and used that as an opportunity to say, hey, we'll give you Mark Williams, but we're going to want Dalton Connect, the pick swap, all that stuff, and just pivoting away from him. Two more things on Mark Williams. The Lakers have done, they cross-referenced his medicals both with their doctor, Dr. Leroy Sims, and also a doctor from, I don't want to, it was it might be Dr. Chris Jones. Don't quote me on that, but from UCLA. So they cross-referenced Mark Williams' medicals both with internally and externally, and they said that there's nothing concerning. Of course, he's played in 40% of his games, but they attribute it more to random injuries. He's not had surgery on any of these injuries, and they're not considered long-term injuries. So he passed his physical. In terms of looking into his medical records and sort of any red flags or concern, they felt like these have all been one-off situations that aren't necessarily going to linger. Now, it was interesting because TNT had a report before the game that Charlotte traded him in large part because of the back and some concerns with that. So seems to be some, I guess, mixed versions of how they interpret that, or maybe that, I don't know. I don't have a great sense of that yet, but the Lakers, at least JJ also doubled down on it publicly and said we're confident in his medical situation. So we shall see with that. And the final thing was Kurt Rambis, according to Pelinka, played a role in this as a former big man, as an advisor to the front office, and as a trusted confidant with Pelinka. He said that Kurt Rambis really felt like Mark Williams has a lot of untapped potential, and just looking at his tape and his skill set, and looking even at the injury history and sort of it being a bit more random, that all those factors kind of led to this guy being undervalued, underappreciated, underrated, and the Lakers see a lot of potential in him. And they like that he's on the Luka timeline. They like that he fits with Luka. And he stopped short of saying all-star. I feel like he was about to get there, then he stopped. But I think, hearing that bit of intel, what was interesting. But basically, the summary of all this was Charlotte, the Lakers didn't think Mark Williams was available. That's why, I've said, if Mark Williams was out there or known to be out there, I would have had him much higher on my trade list in terms of realistic targets. But he wasn't on the table. Charlotte came to the Lakers, and similar to the Mavs, offered him to the Lakers, and then the Lakers negotiated it out in about a 36-hour span, and then Mark Williams ended up being a Laker late Wednesday night. So just wanted to bring you guys behind the scenes with just everything we learned from that news conference today. Then takeaway number 2 is the blueprint forward. And what I mean by that is I feel like, now the last couple of games, especially post trade deadline or post Luka trade, now post trade deadline game, I've been trying to evaluate the team through the lens of okay, how does Mark Williams fit in? How does Luka fit in? And I think that there's the way the team is playing right now, and there's obviously going to be some adjustments and a bit of a learning curve and a growth and just bonding period for them to kind of develop chemistry and experience, continuity, all that stuff. But right now, I think the Lakers have shown, you add Luka to this, and it's they've been playing both slow and fast, because actually from a pace perspective, they've been playing a little bit faster recently, but they've been much slower than last season. For example, Lakers were 4th in pace last season. Right now, I believe they're 23rd or somewhere in the mid-20s. Recently, it's been a little bit higher, kind of 20, 21 range. But more often than not, they've been a bottom 10 pace team this season. JJ has kind of jokingly called them out and called them slow. And that fits in more with the way LeBron is typically like to play. That also fits in more with the way Luka is typically like to play. Until the last couple of seasons, Dallas was looking at just their pace rankings. They've typically been a bottom 5 pace team. It was like 3 straight years, and then the last couple of years, last year they were 8th, this year they're 13th. So they have played a little bit faster over the past couple of years with this new personnel. But LA has played slow, but they score a lot of fast break points. They're 11th in fast break points. They get out in transition. They're efficient in transition. And I think in part it's because of the hit aheads and having big athletes like Rui and Dorian and Vando and Jackson, and having those guys getting out in transition, running the lanes, getting out ahead. You could throw in Christian Coloco and whoever else you want to put in that mix. Of course, AD and Max when they were still on the team, but those guys getting out in transition, and then having LeBron and AR run the show, that's going to generate driving kick opportunity. That's going to drive. That's going to create hit ahead passes. That's going to create 2-on-1 situations, lobs, all that stuff. So now you add Luka to that, and that just supercharges everything. And now your shot creation and playmaking is just at an absurd level with those 3 guys. LeBron talked about it after the game. He was asked about if he thinks there's going to be a challenge or kind of trying to get everybody on the same page, and him and Luka seeing it one way, and maybe the rest of the group not seeing it quite at the same level, just from like a basketball IQ or court vision standpoint. And he lumped Austin in, and he's like, no, like, I think it's simple. I think it's going to work. Like you make the right pass. Guys need to be in the right spot, and we're going to play the right way. Like, you put the ball in Luka's hands, you put the ball in Austin's hands. They're both great decision makers. I'll have the ball some. I'm a great decision maker. And as long as the guys play hard and run to the right spots, we're going to generate good looks for them, and it's going to be beautiful. And I thought like that was a perfect summation of what this Lakers offense could look like, of having 3 high-level playmakers, always having basically 2 of them on the floor with how much they're going to play minutes-wise, and just what that's going to unlock for the offense. And no matter what, like, I think this offense, I think this is going to be a top 5, if not top 3 offense. Really, the only thing that could hold them back is like maybe the shooting, because there have been some rough shooting performances for this group in general. Rui's been shooting well, Dorian's been shooting well, Gabe's been shooting well. So that gives you like 3 foundational shooters. And then, Austin, I think, can kind of fluctuate. Like tonight, he went 0 for 9 on threes. LeBron can kind of fluctuate, but in general, he's a plus shooter. Luka has been around a league average shooter, and he also takes a lot of tough shots. So that kind of lowers his 3-point percentage. So I think from a shooting perspective, they should be fine. It's really just Vando, Mark Williams, and Jackson as the non-shooters in their top 9. But there's the offensive side, and then there's the defensive side, where they become this like big athletic switchable team. And for all of Jackson's limitations, I do think he really plays into that specific mold, that specific identity. And again, they kind of feed off each other because they're getting out in transition. They're playing with a certain speed. And then that also leads to them scoring or certain opportunities. And then they're getting back and just kind of causing havoc. And then you score you score on a team, and they're going to come back and try and score on you. And the Lakers have kind of just, I think, been very disruptive with like their flow of the game and like just these kind of subtleties with it. So I think the formula is going to be, as LeBron implied, like Luka, LeBron, and Austin are running the show. Everyone else is more so in finishing roles around them as cutters, as shooters, as lob threats, getting out in transition. And then defensively, you have a bunch of you do have a bunch of front court size in general with Williams, Hayes, Vando, LeBron, Rui, Dorian, and even Luka. You got 7 guys who are 6'7" and above in your top 9. The only 2 guys under 6'7" in the rotation are Gabe and Austin, and both guys can sometimes play above their size. Like, Gabe is relatively limited, but he's a tough defender who can guard up. I mean, there's certain guys who could just shoot over him, get by him because of the size, the athleticism, but he can, especially if it's like a post-up situation, battle a guy. He's got a strong base. And Austin, is a guy who has been able to guard different backcourt guys, especially if it's not like the big powerful guard who can power through him. If it's more like he's actually defended Steph well historically. And so I think basically looking at the rotation and sort of the way this is all playing out, like I think the Lakers can continue playing the way that they've been playing, but just adding in Luka is going to take the offense to a different level. Adding in Mark Williams and him for all of his defensive concerns and limitations, I do think overall he's a better defender than Jackson. And just adding his defensive rebounding, the shot blocking, and LA probably simplifying his defensive responsibilities, like all that I think is just going to lead to a two-way juggernaut that is going to be tough to beat. And the other part of this is I said slow and fast with their offense, and like when they play slow, they just manipulate everything in the half court. And right now it's Austin and LeBron. You add in Luka, he's arguably the best, half court practitioner. I mean, he's in the conversation. LeBron's in the conversation. Jokic is in the conversation. So I just like watching it trying to piece the puzzles, the puzzle pieces together and just sort of envision like what this group looks like. I just see a really high two-way ceiling on both sides. And then takeaway number 3, this one will be quick, I promise. One potential concern with this group, and I try to keep things real. I try to analyze things as objectively as I can. I still think perimeter speed defensively is a bit of an issue. And that's where I look at the buyout market and what the Lakers could be looking at. And I think that should be the top thing that they try to add, particularly at the 2-guard spot. But really, if it's like a 1 through 3 play, I mean, I think the player needs to be at least like 6'4", 6'5". But as long as they're like 6'4", 6'5", any type of player kind of in that range with a certain level of defensive acumen and athleticism and like just speed and quickness, like specifically like a max replacement. I don't think they're going to find a max replacement on the buyout market, to be clear. But if they can find kind of a defensive, bigger guard / like small wing, I think that would really help them, because looking at this specific matchup, and it might just be a Golden State thing with the way that they play, how small they go, how many threes they take, their motion offense side to side with dribble handoffs and split cuts and all these different things. Like it might just be a specific thing to Golden State and not really to the rest of the league. But I thought the Lakers really struggled, especially in that third quarter, with some of their actions and some of the handoff stuff, some of the split cuts, and just the quickness and sort of the, like Golden State, it's very much a system that it's almost kind of like a brain, and they have this synergy where they can kind of like, there's a read and react element to it, especially with Draymond and Steph, but even with some of the longer tenured guys in the rotation. And I think LA struggled with that at first. Then they started to adapt and did a better job. But I still ultimately felt like there is just kind of a physical limitation to some of these guys defensively in terms of their perimeter speed. And you're putting a lot ultimately on Gabe and Austin, and putting, like, there was times where Rui Hachimura was guarding Pajemski or Buddy Hield or Moses Moody. And it's like, that's not really an ideal matchup for Rui. DFS had to guard Steph a lot. And I thought, like, off the ball, he did a good job of holding his jersey and being physical and like getting into him. But ultimately, Steph's too quick for him. And all he needs is a sliver of space to get his shot off. And like, I thought all things considered, Dorian did like a fine job on him, and Steph had a poor shooting night. I didn't realize he took 35 shots. Wow. 13 to 35. Like, Steph had a weird game, but did get hot in the second half. And I thought Dorian, like, again, based on sort of the physical, like, Dorian's never been a guy that you put on Steph. Like, he's always been more of a wing guy. And then more recently, he's been more of like a big guy defensively. I thought he held his own for the most part, but Vando, for whatever reason, they didn't really put on Steph. They had him playing bigger matchups. LeBron, of course, like, I thought LeBron actually had a solid defensive game and had plenty of good rotations and closeouts and stuff. He was very engaged, as he has been. And then Jackson, I thought, struggled with some of the Steph decision making with pick and rolls and handoffs. But like, I say all this to say, I think I think it's gonna be hard to find this player. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but if you can find like one more plus rangy athletic defender that's a little bit smaller and quicker, particularly compared to like DFS. I think that player has value for this group, and it might not even be like an every night player, but like a matchup like tonight, I think that's the type of player that they kind of needed tonight. Like, like I think like a Bruce Brown type. Obviously, he's not available, and he's not like, even if he was, that the Lakers couldn't sign him because of his contract. But like that, like kind of a 6'4", 6'5", like athletic defender who can defend multiple positions, maybe rebound a little bit. And again, this is a wish list. This is not necessarily a player that they can find, not even necessarily a player that's out there. But as they're looking at like what they need for the 15th roster spot, I think that's a current hole on the roster that in some matchups it won't matter, and they'll be able to get by. But I do think like this particular matchup, and looking at like an OKC, they play a lot of quick, smaller players. Cleveland has a couple of quick all-star, all-NBA type guards. Like, just thinking bigger picture, I think that's like one thing that if they could find a way to address that in the buyout market or in free agency, I think that would go a long way in terms of shoring up this roster and whatever holes there are. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A portion. See, we got a couple of super chats. Xavier Fall, I don't see a question, but I appreciate the super chat. And then we have one from Jazz_Sing. What do you think went wrong in the second half? Worrisome. So I think Golden State changed, like kind of dictated the terms in the second half. And they went small. They went Draymond at the 5. They went with a lot of Buddy Hield, Podziemski, Steph, and then Moses Moody. Pat Spencer kind of had like an out of body. Like I know he's had some games and stretches like this, but like it felt like he was having an out of body experience and like hitting jumpers on Vando and stuff, and it was kind of crazy. But they really downsized and played guys who are either like elite shooters in Buddy Hield and Steph Curry, or guys who are kind of excel at like doing some big man role player, like little things in smaller lineups, like Podziemski and Moody. Like they can attack closeouts, they can get offensive rebounds, they're good cutters. They can also play make a little bit, run pick and roll, dribble handoff. So like they have a roster designed to play small. I think the problem was, in my opinion, when they downsized, LA just didn't have the speed to keep up with them. And LA's big and they're athletic, and ultimately they were able to overpower them both in transition and getting to the free throw line. They got to the free throw line 36 times. Austin had a weird game because he had 23 points, which is good, but he shot 4 for 17 from the floor and 0 for 9 on threes, and had 4 turnovers. But then he got to the free throw line 16 times and like kind of offset the off shooting performance. So it was a weird game from Austin. Also had 3 steals. So like weird Austin game, but overall I would lead like for what it's worth. Lakers were +2 in his 36 minutes, and it felt like that was kind of the right plus minus for him. It was like they were a little bit better with him on the floor, and that kind of offsets some of the struggles. They also had 4 turnovers. So But basically, I just think Golden State, with their chemistry together, the continuity, the offensive system that they have, and the personnel, that's a tricky matchup for LA with matching up with them on the perimeter. Now, again, LA has won these games, and they ultimately just play smash mouth basketball and overpower Golden State. So I think it is ultimately an advantageous matchup for the Lakers. My bigger fear, it's not a Golden State fear. It's like can OKC do some of this stuff against them? Can quick athletic teams like Memphis and Houston do some of these things against them? Can a Cleveland do some of these things against them? Like it's more the other elite teams kind of above Golden State that have, again, not the same offensive system, not the same personnel, not the same history with a Draymond and a Steph, but some elements of just the way they run their offense, quick perimeter guys that LA might not be able to match up with. So I think that's just something that if they can add in the buyout market, that's what I would do. But ultimately, LA, like, I mean, it was what, 60? I'm looking at it, 63-51 in the second half. So they were outscored by 12. But the Lakers, like, this game was never really in jeopardy. It got relatively close, but LA was in control basically the whole way. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Crazy growth recently, dude. Congrats. Almost up to 1K average on likes. Also, how awesome is it that we're still getting Curry / LeBron classics in 2025. Thank you for the compliment. Thank you for the super chat. It has been awesome to see the growth of the channel from a subscriber context, from a views per video, views per live, average viewer. I think this week it's basically been in the thousands plus, and for several lives it was 2,000 plus. So definitely seeing a lot of growth, seeing a lot of new audience, and that's been really cool. And to your last point, I mean, Curry and LeBron, it's like, I mean, we're seeing this in 2025 when these dudes first met up in the finals 10 years ago. And they were both, I mean, what? So LeBron was 30, Steph was 26. And so right then, I mean, Steph's about to be in his prime. LeBron's like smack dab in his prime. And look at where these guys are at now. They're both still top 10 players in the league. I think LeBron's played like a top 5 guy recently. Steph at points has been in that conversation. Steph slipped a little bit this season, and tonight, again, like 37 points on 35 shots is pretty wild. But I mean, they're two of the greatest players of all time. I think I said I think LeBron's the GOAT, but at worst, the second best player. Like Steph is right there in terms of 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th best player. Like you could put him anywhere kind of, I think, in that like 8 to 12 range, and it would make sense. And he's just amazing. So like, do not take these matchups for granted. LeBron, Steph in 2025. Who knows how much longer we'll have these two facing off against each other, but we've had so many classic games and moments, not just of course in the finals, but even in the regular season. It feels like every Lakers Warriors LeBron Steph matchup has a little bit more to it. And tonight was just the latest example, the latest chapter in their storied rivalry. Next one from Shabugan. Thank you for the super chat. Counterpoint: if Austin hits a reasonable amount of threes, we win by 17 to 20 points. Sometimes these games happen. Yeah, I mean, that's why, like, I think the way my mind works is like, to your counterpoint, I'm going to present like my rationale is like, I'm always trying to think about like counterpoints and weak spots, and it's sort of like, I always think like what could be better, what could the group be better, what could a player be doing better. So I kind of am always filtering the game and my thoughts around it through that perspective. So tonight that was kind of my big thing of I did just feel like the perimeter speed at times really gave the Lakers problems, both like beating them off the dribble, but with DHOs and handoffs and handoffs and split cuts and like those types of things. I just felt like it gave the Lakers some problems. But to your point, like Austin could have shot the ball better. And if he has like an average shooting night, he hits even 3 threes, like this is a totally different game. So, I mean, Lakers did shoot well overall, 50% overall, 37% on threes. Did get to the free throw line 36 times. So that's another factor that like, I don't think you can count on every night. Like I think mid 20s, maybe mid to high 20s, but 36 is a lot of free throws. So there are some things that went in their favor, some things that didn't. I think just for me, from like a macro perspective, I just wanted to bring up, like, I still think already perimeter speed, what was a little bit, I wouldn't say a little bit, like a relatively big issue for this group. Max kind of, I think, had grown into a point of attack defender to take, like, think about his performances against Ja and Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson and like some of the all-star level guys that Max either held in check or held relatively in check. And I think they miss like that particular skill set right now. And for as good as Dorian and Vando and Gabe are defensively, I just don't think they have quite the same. Like Gabe's a little bit too small. Dorian, I don't think is quick or as quick or athletic to like replicate the max role specifically. And Vando might be able to do it, but he's still on a bit of a minutes restriction. It does come with some offensive concerns. And for whatever reason, LA's used him more as like, I think they like him actually closer to the basket right now versus playing more on the perimeter. So I just think it's like, if I'm finding like the one flaw right now that I'm seeing game to game, like I think it's been an issue in general, but really with this game and like the comeback that Golden State made in the third quarter in the second half, I felt like was directly correlated with LA's speed and the inability to keep up with Golden State. Now, as I said, I think it's a Golden State specific thing because of how small they are, because of how quick they are, because of the way they run their offense. So I don't think every team is going to pose the same problems. But I think if I'm scouting the Lakers and I'm looking at like, why did Golden State go on this run and trying to glean something from it, that would be something that stands out to me. And that would be a way I would try to attack the Lakers. So that's really the only point I was trying to make. All right, back into the chat. Omaris Hall, I think it's just we couldn't score against them in the second half. That's a good point. Like the offense definitely gummed up, but I felt Golden State, like just to compare each quarter, right? So first quarter, 34-21 LA. 34 is a good number for LA, 21, bad number for Golden State, good number for LA defensively. Second quarter, 35 for LA, great number. 28 for Golden State. You want to keep them under 30, ideally under 25, but like 28's like a decent number. Then the third quarter gets to 30, which starts to be the danger zone. Fourth quarter gets to 33. So I think progressively Golden State got better throughout the game. They scored more. They looked more comfortable. And I think like really, if they played the way they did in the second half and the first half, I don't know if they win the game, but I think it's a much closer game kind of throughout. But LA, third quarter, 21 points. That was, I think, to your point, like I think that was the quarter they really struggled. They were turning the ball over and not making shots. And then fourth quarter was much closer. LA had 30, so Golden State only outscored them by 3. So it was really the third quarter that did the most damage. But I do think, in my opinion, it was more the defense. But to your point, I also think the offense was a factor as well. Natalia says, we really don't need Reeves with Luka here. Max is literally perfect. I watched the Mavs Celtics game today and his impact on defense was amazing. I'm going to miss Max. I think they really do miss Max. And I know this is going to sound crazy. Like, of course they miss AD. So I'm not even going to make it like a Max versus AD thing. But like, if there was any way in hindsight to have like kept Max, even if it cost two of the remaining pick swaps and it's like whatever assets you kind of had to put out, honestly, even if it meant like doing a rotation player and like, I'd rather have Max than Gabe. I'd rather have Max than Rui if I'm the Lakers. So like alternate universe, it's easy to kind of play the what if game and change things. But like, I think I've said it countless times. Like I thought Max was becoming arguably their fourth best and most impactful player. I thought it was really between him and DFS, and he was playing a pivotal role, and losing him is a big loss for them. Now I wouldn't go as far as to say they don't need Reeves, because I still think he's their third best player. I don't think it's close with whoever you want to put at number 4. And I think one of the advantages of having Reeves is like they'll have the lineups where they have all three of them on the floor together. And it will be interesting to see how Austin adapts and what, like how JJ uses him. But the real key is, I think, staggering all these guys and having 2 of them on the floor at all times is going to give you 2 like elite top all-time playmakers on the floor, and then 1 really good playmaker who's like even been great some nights, some performances in Austin. And you combine those 3 together and have 2 of them on the floor for basically the entire game, and your offense just hums at a certain level. So I think that's I know. Look, I get like I've been doing this long enough now in the post game streams and stuff. Like I know Austin's a polarizing guy for a variety of reasons, but I think like I don't think it should be twisted that like he's still a really good and valuable player. They need his offense. They need his playmaking. They need his shot making. I think he's probably going to go back to more of an off ball role, and he's shot like I think when he's not had as large of an offensive burden, he's been a good shooter off the ball. He's been close to a 40% catch and shoot guy through like his first 3 seasons. So I think if you get back to more of that version of him in a better defensive version, then I think Austin can almost be more of like a 3-and-D guy. And the defense is not going to ever be at the max DFS Vando level, but I think with more energy, he can do more in that sense, and then offensively do less and be more of like a shooter cutter. And he could operate out of the short roll or make quick passes, quick reads out of that. So I think some of the Austin criticism has gone a little bit too far. And I get like you from a skill set perspective, you could argue, like, I'm not going to deny that, like, that spot could maybe be served elsewhere, and it could maybe be served with a max type or just like another 3-and-D type. But the Lakers have the roster they have. And I think if this team is going to win a championship or compete for a championship, they need Austin to be their third best player, and they need a lot from him. And I don't anticipate that changing. BLC, thank you for the super chat. Will this core stay long term, extend LBJ's career? Let's pull it up. Let's pull up I will share my screen in a second. So I'm on Spot Track, and this is the Lakers cap sheet for this season. Let's look at next season. So LeBron and Dorian have player options. I'm going to assume LeBron opts out, but there is a chance he opts in. He either opts out and resigns, or he could try and extend. But we'll see what happens with LeBron. But I'm going to assume LeBron's a Laker next season. Got Luka under contract, Rui under contract. Rui's expiring. Luka's technically expiring. They're not going to trade Luka. Let's just let's put that to rest. DFS has a player option. Lakers could extend him or re-sign him. Austin has one more year after this, but it's a player option. I'm going to assume Austin's going to opt out. Vando still has a couple more years after this. Gabe's expiring. Maxi's expiring. Mark Williams is going to be a restricted free agent after this year. And Shake has a non-guarantee. Bronny has a couple more years. Trey Jemison is on a 2-way contract. So looking at the chessboard here, of course, with LeBron, it depends how long he plays. The intel that I had dating back to last season was that he was going to play one more year, 23rd season, retire after 2026. I know that's something that Shams has reported. Like we reported that together at The Athletic, and then he's continued to report that at ESPN. So it seems like he's as plugged in with LeBron and Clutch and that camp as anybody. So it does seem like at least the operating assumption right now is LeBron's playing one more year, but who knows with the way, like, playing with Luka could extend his career. And if he just transitions into basically being an elite big man instead of an elite like perimeter player, and like could kind of be like a Karl Malone out there, just with the screening and rolling and the pick and pop and like all the different ways. Like, it obviously you can do more than that, but like there's a way that this gets extended, and that would be interesting. But so LeBron, that's the one that's kind of murky. Luka is eligible for an extension this summer. We'll see if he ends up signing that. Maybe he signs a 2+1. I think that's the most likely outcome. But could play one more year out. Like he'll be under contract for one more year regardless. And then if he signs the extension, it'll kick in after this season, or he can kind of wait and see, wait it out, see if he wants to sign the extension. But I assume like the Lakers can offer him the most money. It makes the most sense. Rui, the Lakers I'm not quite sure. I don't think they're going to want to pay him as much as he's currently making. I think they'd want to pay him a little bit less, and I don't know how he'll feel about that. Like that's to be clear, please do not aggregate me on that. That's speculation. But that's just kind of my read on the situation, especially with them trying to trade him. And I think a lot of teams actually like Rui at a certain price point, but they view him more, in at least in the conversations I've had, they view him more as like a mid-level guy, not a 16, 17, $18 million guy. So I think people felt like Rui's contract was a little too rich, and that's why he was so polarizing at that price point. But if he was making, $12, $13 million, I think people would like his contract a lot more. DFS, I do think will either re-sign or extend. Austin's a tricky one because he's due for a significant pay raise. I think he's going to make 30 plus million when probably summer 2026. And because you have LeBron and Luka, now obviously LeBron might be retiring in that summer anyway. So now you need more playmaking, but you could argue if you have LeBron and Luka, even if LeBron's short term, like you might not want to sign Austin to that big of a contract, but we'll see. Vando's on a contract for a couple more years. Gabe, I think it depends on how the rest of his tenure goes. Like, does he stay healthy? Does he continue to play at this level? Maxey is a guy that Luka likes. They have a friendship, a rapport. I think it kind of depends on him getting healthy, seeing what he looks like. Mark Williams will be restricted. Lakers will sign him. He'll be a Laker long term. Bronny will be a Laker long term. So, or at least a couple more years. So, looking at it, I think that really the two big pivot points, in my opinion, are Austin and Rui, and what happens with those two. For Rui, just sort of like what's the market for Rui, and does he continue playing as well as he's played recently? And like maybe he does justify that 16, 17, $18 million. And maybe he does resign with the Lakers at that price. But with Austin, I think he's going to have a big market, and it's going to kind of come down to like, from an asset perspective, how do the Lakers view him at that price? And because you have Luka now and he can run the offense at such a high level, like, do you want to spend that salary on an Austin, or do you want to try and spend that salary elsewhere? That is a big summer in terms of free agency. A lot of stars and all-stars are available. So we'll see. But I would say like most of this core, like I expect Luka and Mark to be Lakers longer term. Vando's under contract for a while. DFS, I think, will be re-signed. So right there, you got 4. LeBron depends on how long he plays. Then I think the couple swing pieces are Rui and Austin. But most of this group should be back. I mean, I didn't even mention like Jackson technically will have been a free agent in 2025, and some of the minimum like Christian but I don't see those guys sticking longer term. Maybe Jackson. But I think it depends on the contract. So I hope that helped answer your question. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Undefeated with Vando. He is so valuable. We would have beaten Denver last year in the playoffs with a healthy Vando. He would have been a difference maker since most of the games in that series were close. That is a good point. And also remember, Vando had been averaging double-digit points in the prior, I want to say 8 games before he got injured. I think he had double-digit points in 6 of the 8, and overall was averaging like 10.6 or something like that in terms of points. So Vando was they had figured out how to use him offensively. He was playing well. He was defending well. So you're certainly like that could be right. I do go back to 2023, and he was played off the floor in that conference finals. He if you look at his minutes, he did progressively play less. So I do feel like one difference, in my opinion, between Darvin and JJ is that I think Darvin had his like kind of sensibilities, and he had a quick hook with, I think he had a quick hook with Vando and Max, and like there's clearly some players or skill sets, characteristics, whatever he didn't really trust. So with Vando, it was like when teams start playing off of him, okay, we probably got to move him to the bench. With Max, it's like, okay, he misses an open 3, he has a turnover. Okay, like we can't trust this guy. And he had a longer leash with guys like Torian or Cam or Spencer Dinwiddie or whatever. But it felt like he kind of had his own opinion of Vando, and I do wonder if ultimately, like, if JJ was coaching Vando, I think it might have been different in that sense. But like I think JJ is a little less reactionary, unless someone's just like really struggling, then he'll pull the plug. And like we've seen countless guys only play like one shift this season in a game because their shift is so bad. But for the most part, I think JJ kind of has a little bit of a more like a bigger picture perspective on a lot of the players and their roles, and a clear vision of like, this is the optimal version of the roster, and I'm going to try and fit everyone into the roles to kind of accentuate that and just optimize it. And so I guess this is a long-winded way of saying I don't know if I would have trusted Darvin to use him correctly, despite the progress that he showed before the injury, but we'll never know. Puppy Chow 302, listening to Locked On Hornets earlier, they were laughing, said nobody watches Hornets games, including Pelinka. Williams' defense is not good. I don't think that's a surprise. I said yesterday that he's not a good defender. He's a good shot blocker, and he is a good defensive rebounder. But in terms of pick and roll coverages, in terms of closing out, rotating, post defense is kind of hit or miss. He's a below average defender who is relatively limited on that end, but he does have the physical tools, and I think he uses them well offensively. I think he still needs to learn them, how to do them defensively. And JJ said, the funny thing was, we were told pregame not to ask about Mark Williams because the trade was not official and JJ couldn't comment about it. Dan Wojcicki of the LA Times, who was just recently on the show for the midseason grades, didn't see the text, so he asked JJ, that JJ was like, I can't comment on any transactions that are not official or whatever. And then post game, he finally was able to talk about it, and he mentioned that with Mark Williams, obviously they love the size, the athleticism, the physicality, the tools that he has, the finishing, the rebounding, but they want to work on his screening. They want to work on his playmaking out of the short roll, and they want to work on his defense. So I think the Lakers, at least JJ is aware, and JJ knows Mark Williams. He's been a mentor to him, which continues. There's a trend here where JJ is very involved in terms of like a lot of the players on the Lakers now have a relationship with JJ, which has been interesting. That's kind of always been a coaching thing. Like I remember when I was coaching Doc Rivers, it was even worse because it was like, if you have a good game against Doc Rivers of the Clippers, they're gonna sign you the next season. But now looking at the roster, it's like, okay, LeBron, Mind the Game podcast, and they were business partners before being player coach. Luka played within Dallas. Maxey played within Dallas. DFS played within Dallas. Jackson Hayes played within New Orleans. That's 5 guys right there. 5 of the 14. I don't think played with Shake or Christian. He didn't play with Keefe. Austin, he had on his podcast. Gabe didn't play with. Oh, I could just look down here at the box score. Rui didn't play with. Vando didn't play with. Koloko obviously didn't play with. Bronny didn't play with. But like, it's basically half the roster has some connection to JJ in terms of like either playing with him, knowing him beforehand, having been on his podcast. So that's interesting. I asked Jovan, any thoughts on what the Lakers can be looking to do with $40 million in expiring contracts but no assets? I think in that scenario, you're talking about Kleba and Gabe and Rui and some combination of those guys. What you can do is take back multi-year deals that teams don't want. So, for example, if we had a time machine or the contracts are different, like, or if you went back to like last summer, but they had that, let's go back to last summer. They have the $40 million in expiring. because they didn't. They basically only had D'Lo, as we saw with their trade options. They could have traded for Zach LaVine, and at that point, his value was low. Like he's had a much better season this year than he did last year, and he's rehabbed his value to some extent, not to like a crazy extent, because obviously we saw what the package ended up being, but like last summer, based on where Zach LaVine was at from a value perspective, I mean, you would have had to throw in probably, one more guy to get to his salary, but you could have offered $40 million in expirings, thrown in a pick swap, thrown in a second, even if they're not that valuable, but like optically Chicago can say they got that and then get Zach LaVine. So I think it's not ideal to have those expirings and not have assets, but what it does is allow teams to get off money that they don't want to have. So you got to find the sweet spot of like, who are guys that are maybe a little bit overpaid or on like multi-year contracts that maybe the team doesn't love that they're on a multi-year contract, and bring back those types of guys. So it's more about like teams getting off money than anything. If you have the expirings plus actual assets, that opens up a whole different tier and like pool of players. But I think specifically in this scenario, if they are going to not have the assets in terms of draft capital, but have the expirings, I think that the types of players or contracts you're targeting are more so guys on multi-year deals or guys with contracts that teams don't love. And it's got to be the sweet spot of like the right guy, right? Like you don't want to take on an albatross, like horrible contract. You more so want to find the guy where it's like a Zach LaVine of, okay, he's probably a bit overpaid at like 43, but is he still like a $25-30 million player? Like probably. Let's take that gamble and hope he exceeds our expectations and like lives up to the contract. And he has like this season, at least up to this point with Chicago. So that's like, I think the type of move the Lakers would be in line to make. I don't know if they're necessarily going to trade all three of those guys and just try and get a big asset like that. But you have optionality. You could do Kleba and Gabe and Rui, Kleba and Rui, and you can go anywhere between like 22 to 40-ish million in expirings. And that gives you some options in terms of the type of salary you can bring back. Mr. TD, can you Euro step Jovan? I'm not sure. I've honestly never really tried to Euro step. That's not like ever been my game. I've always been I'm more of a finisher than creator. Like I would say I'm a good passer for primarily playing big man. Like I was a center in high school, and then I've always kind of been like a forward/center, depending on how tall the group is I'm playing with. So I would say primarily being like more of a front court player and not handling the ball as much. I'm a good passer, but I'm not like I would say I'm not even like a good ball handler. I've always been more of like catch it in the post, do some type of drop step, hook shot, or space the floor and shoot threes or pick and pop. So that's more my bag. I'm not much of like a ball handler, super quick, like quick twitch guy. So also Euro stepping became kind of like, it was obviously around, but I feel like it blew up more so after I was in high school. So I feel like it wasn't something that we even were like practicing or like trying to do as much. And then like right after I got to college and was playing like rec and stuff, like that's when I feel like it kind of blew up more like casually and to like the wider audience. And at that point, I just kind of already had my game, so I stuck with what I could do. Suga, who's the Lakers' best point of attack defender? Vando? Yeah, I mean, it is Vando. I don't think he's quite back to where he was defensively on the ball. I still think he's very disruptive. I still think he can cause chaos. And I've really liked him off of the ball as a helper, playing passing lanes, tipping dribbles loose, rotating, rebounding, providing rim protection. Like I think he's done a lot of those things well. I don't think on the ball he's been quite the same level. And again, that's to be expected. He missed nearly a year of basketball, and he's been back now, like 3 weeks or so, 2-3 weeks. So it's still a process for him. Rola says Shake is the new JHS. Well, I'm not sure because JHS is out of the league in less than 2 years, but I think he'll get another shot. If not someone claiming him, I think he'll get like a summer league shot, and then maybe a G League shot, but we'll see. Fang Charlie says Duran would have been good. Yeah, he would have been. Just hit the 1 hour mark, so going to go about 5 more minutes. This reminds me, as I see the little wrench there with Fang Charlie, if you guys want to be a mod, I haven't posed it to the audience. Let me know in the comment section on the video so I can add you by your username. I'm pretty sure I added most people. I think there are a few people that this was probably over a month ago. It was over a month ago. I think it might have been like December when I asked people, and I tried to add most people. I think a few slipped through the cracks, so I apologize. And if you want it to be and you are not, please let me know and I will add you as a mod. But I will say that the mods have done a great, like, it's been a while since I talked about the mods, but I want to shout you all out. You've done a great job. There's been like far less spamming. I really haven't even noticed it. I think it gets handled really quickly. So appreciate you all. Lakers says rank these young bigs: Kessler, Duran, Mark Williams. I think you have the like. Certainly Kessler is number one. I don't think there's any argument for Duran or Mark Williams ahead. I think Kessler is a far better defender than both of them. I think he's arguably the best rebounder, and he's definitely the best finisher in terms of like. Dude's shoots above 70% at the rib and overall from the floor. Like he's just a finishing monster because of his size and his coordination and whatever. So I think Kessler is the best by a good amount. I think Duran versus Mark Williams is close, but I think Duran's better defensively. And I think defense at the 5 is arguably like that's where your defense is kind of the most important. And you don't want to be a minus defender 5. So if we're talking like offense and scoring, I think it's Williams, Kessler, Duran. If we're talking defense, I think it's Kessler, Duran, Williams. And I think if we're talking overall, I would go Kessler, Duran, Williams. Amaris Hall says Shake's rookie year was with JJ. So that's over half the roster there. BC, so I forgot to touch on this earlier. BC says no Luka Saturday, super disappointing. So JJ, there was the report by Mark Stein. So initially it was initially Luka was targeting his return with Dallas on February 8th, which is Saturday. That's what Mark Stein had reported. Then that continued to be the plan, and it was like Saturday, maybe Monday, but really targeting Saturday. JJ confirmed that. Then today, Mark Stein reported it's looking like a Monday. We asked JJ. I asked him pregame about it in his 5-on-5, and he said that it's looking like, maybe Saturday, but most likely Monday. Like that's kind of like the new target. So Saturday's not ruled out, but it's trending in the direction of Monday. So it seems like Luka's going to make his debut Monday against Utah. And then Mark Williams, Coach Luka said, JJ said that Mark Williams, they're not sure yet. Like the trade just became official at 9:45. So he's got to come out here and, get acclimated and stuff. So maybe Saturday, but at Monday at the latest for Mark Williams. But I think there will be a chance he's available Saturday. Super chat from Harry Chinani. Kerr said NBA should make trade deadline at All-Star break to avoid awkward moments telling players they have been traded just before a game. Fans are telling players on the bench about trades, which is weird too. Thoughts? I hadn't really thought of it like in that context. I hadn't seen that from Kerr. I probably agree, to be honest. I think it's been weird to like. I will say from a media perspective, it's been kind of weird to cover these last couple of games because it's like the Clippers game, like the group was just like gutted because they lost AD, they lost Max. Those are two like starters to like locker room stalwarts, especially in AD, like a leader, but also in Max. I think the group was really proud of Max. They were really happy for Max at like the growth. Like, remember, he faced adversity early in the season. He was put in a key bench role. He struggled. He got benched. He got DNP CDs. Then he was given an opportunity, and he took it and ran with it and played his way from like ninth man to eighth man to seventh man to sixth man to starter. And so I think the group like was very fond of Max and just, you know, his growth as a player this season. So I say all that to say, like, I think if let's say, because typically the way it goes, right, is teams play up till Wednesday, then they have Thursday off, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday is All-Star weekend. Maybe you end it on Tuesday, like the schedule going into All-Star break, and then you have the trade deadline on that Wednesday, and then by All-Star weekend or that Thursday, and you have like a couple days there to do the deals, and then by that Thursday you have guys, and really, like, if you're an All-Star or already going to All-Star weekend, you're not going to like change all your plans because you got traded. You're still going to go to All-Star weekend, and then you'll figure it out on that Monday or that Sunday. So I kind of agree with Kurt. I think it just is kind of an unnecessary distraction during the games, and like it just I think it kind of, like, everyone loves the trade deadline and all the transaction cycle and stuff, but I think there's a way to do it where it's less impactful for the players, and you can kind of just focus on the games leading into it. Cognitive dissonance. Jovan, wish we could have flipped Maxi for Man. They couldn't have done it because Maxi didn't make as much as Man. That's the one thing. Since that dream is dead, I'm hoping we could get one of Javonte Green, Gary Harris, Jay Rich, Springer off the buyout market. I agree with you. I mentioned Jay Rich and Springer yesterday or today. my brain can't really remember as guys I would like, but we'll see. Merc44 says, are we sure Maxi's completely useless? No, we are not sure. I think there's a chance he could be really valuable, especially on that contract. ASD123, oh my God, I can't believe I missed an hour of Jovan Live. Well, the good news is you could rewatch it, but you're here now, and I appreciate you tuning in. Omaris Hall, Jovan, what percentage do you think Luka signs an extension with the Lakers this summer? You think it's based on how far we go? I think he's going to sign a 2+1 at some point, whether it's this summer or next, or at some point leading into the following summer. So I would put the percentage he signs an extension at like 80%, whether it's this summer or next. I'm not quite sure. It doesn't really make a difference financially. So like maybe this summer I would put it to like 40 or 45%. But I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. And again, it doesn't really make a difference financially. But I would say him signing an extension at some point, and the figure is going to be the same, I would put like 80%. And that might even be low. It might even, like, I'm naturally a little bit more conservative on projecting stuff or putting percentages. But because it's also two to tango, right? Like, I mean, of course, LA is not going to like give up on Luka, but like, injuries or whatever, like, you always got to leave a little bit of wiggle room, but I would say like 80+% he signs an extension at some point. Okay, I realize I'm way behind in the chat, so I'm back now. Harry Chinani, quick thoughts on rest of the trades on the league. I think SA is the biggest winners after us. 1B plus Fox is going to be lethal. I agree. I like, let me pull up a quick list to make sure I don't miss anybody. So I'm looking at ESPN's list. They got the Lakers as a winner. I agree. They got, so I think Cleveland's a winner. I really like the DeAndre Hunter move, and the price surprised me. Like, what had been out there in terms of his price was like a first, and obviously like DFS, they wanted a first, they got 3 seconds. So, but with Hunter, it had been like higher than a first. So it was kind of surprising to see them settle for so far below that in terms of 3 seconds. But I think Cleveland got better. I love what San Antonio did. I think it was they picked the right player and the right time to go for it. And they probably, like, we'll see, maybe they make the plan, but even if they don't, they're set up for the future so well. I would say San Antonio, Cleveland, and the Lakers are probably my 3 biggest winners off the top of my head. And then losers, Dallas, longer term. Shorter term, I still think they'll be pretty good. I didn't get what Memphis was doing. They kind of like sold off guys, and I feel like they should be trying to add to this group. Then I would say Phoenix not being able to do anything with Bradley Beal or like dramatically improve their roster. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing Art of War wants to be added. Just drop it in a comment under the stream, and I will add you if you want to be a mod. But I appreciate all of you. IS wants to be a mod. Slime 4L, BC. Okay, I appreciate you all. I really do. Pensive Mamba says, Jovan, are you hearing anything free agency related? Not, if you're talking about like in the aftermath, like, so that was a question that was posed to Rob of like, what skill set do you need? He said he and JJ haven't even talked about it yet, and they're going to reconvene tomorrow to talk about what they feel like they need. So what I reported today at The Athletic is I've heard they're going to be patient. They want to, they're not in a rush to find that potential 15 player, and that talking to people around the team, they view the shooting guard spot as the one current hole right now. So it seems like that's the type of guy they're going to try and get. And just like logically looking at the depth chart, they kind of have everything else. They don't need a point guard. They have multiple wings that can play 30 plus minutes a night if they so choose. They have a couple centers, and like all their 2-way guys are setters. So it's like, just logically looking at the roster and the layout of everything, they need another shooting guard. So I think that's the direction they're going to try and go in, but there's still some fallout in terms of who becomes available, guys being bought out. I know like Lonnie Walker, for example, his EuroLeague contract goes till February 18th. So he can't even be added until after February 18th. So like, there's a lot of factors at play, a lot of moving parts, but I'll keep you guys updated, obviously. But it's seeming like if they do add someone, it's probably going to be a shooting guard. Maybe they end up just doing best player available and saying like, hey, we don't love the shooting guard options. Let's just get like the best player. But for now, from what I've heard, it sounds more so like adding a shooting guard at some point. But again, no rush. Keon Park, do you know anything new about Mark Williams? Is he in LA yet? I believe he's in LA. So one thing he has to go through his physical at the facility and go through all that stuff. So that's a part of it. But no like new intel other than what I said earlier in the show. Again, it sounds like he's either going to play Saturday or Monday. Just kind of depends how like tomorrow's a get what you need day. So not a practice. They're not going to have shoot around Saturday because it's a 1 p.m. game. It being a 1 p.m. game, honestly, probably makes it less likely that now that I'm thinking about it, probably less likely that he plays compared to if it was a later game. But from my understanding, it's not yet been determined. I don't know why the trade got held up as long as it did. That was kind of weird. Pugzilla says Gary Harris would be a dream flyer if available. I agree. Kane Norris. Let's say the Lakers sign Springer. Could he fit into the Max Christie role? I don't think he's as good as Max. Definitely not as good of a shooter as Max. Could he do some of the things defensively? Could he be 70% of Max defensively, 80% of Max defensively? Like maybe. I think I view him and most of the options as like the 9th or 10th guy in the rotation, and more so like guys that probably aren't playing more than kind of in that, like basically like how Shake has been used, but just like a different skill set and looking for that player to be more of a defender. So Shake has kind of been all over the place in terms of like 8 minutes one night, 10 minutes one night, 12 minutes one night, 15 minutes one night, depending on how he plays. I could see Springer or this player archetype that the Lakers potentially sign having that type of role. Puppy Chow 302, have you had any time to shoot the shit with Luka? Not yet. Luka has not been in the locker room in either game against the Clippers or the Lakers. I can share that. So I don't know how well you guys know the Lakers locker room in terms of like the layout based on like seeing interviews and stuff. And unfortunately, I'm not able to film. I'm able to film in the locker room, but I'm not able to like go to people's lockers and like kind of give you guys a tour. Otherwise, I would do that. But it sort of, you walk into the room. So think of, it's basically a rectangle. And I think I've tried to explain it before. It's hard to do it with the camera here, but like, okay, if my head right here is like the back of the room, and then these are the sides, and then this is like the entrance and the whiteboard. Back here is where Kobe's locker used to be. He had 2 lockers. I forgot who was next to him. I guess it depended on the season. Then for the longest time, it's been LeBron with 2 lockers and AD next to him. Now Keith is there. And then looking at it again, kind of like if we're looking at it like this, in that corner, that's where the shower door is. And Luka now has 2 lockers in the corner there right next to the shower door. So Luka and LeBron are technically next to each other. It's just he's not directly next to him like AD was. He's now in his own corner. But Luka also has 2 lockers, which is kind of interesting because AD didn't have 2 lockers for whatever that was worth. But he's not been in there when I've been in there. And what I've gathered from talking to people who covered him in Dallas, and there's actually a Slovenian reporter at the game tonight who stopped me after the game to kind of just introduce himself and talk a little bit. And he's been covering Luka since he was 17, first in Spain, then when he got to the NBA, then with the Slovenian national team. So he's been covering Luka. Like he said, he would fly out to Dallas in like each season. He'd fly out to Dallas for a month and just spend a month covering the Mavericks, covering Luka, and just long story short, it sounds like he's kind of like a Jokic type in the sense of like some guys like want to be friends with the media. Some guys want to use the media for favors or for positive coverage, or some guys are just, super nice, outgoing, chatty. Doesn't seem like Luka is like that. He seems to be more of like, if I interact with the media, it's going to be because I'm contractually and financially obligated to interact with the media, but it seems like he gives short answers. He's not really a guy who like chops it up with the media a lot. So that's the early kind of feedback I've gotten from other people who've covered him. Now every situation's different. Sometimes I heard some stuff about how AD was in New Orleans, and AD was much different in LA compared to how he was in New Orleans, at least in my experience. So guys change, new situation, like we'll see. But I think we're not really going to interact with him in that sense until he's active and like actually playing in the locker room because he's suiting up. So because a lot of times injured guys aren't even in the locker room when we're in there because they don't want to see us, or they just don't like. A lot of guys like to get out when the media comes in. So that's a little bit of context. Doggy says, what about going after Josh Richardson? I think he should be on the list. Keon Park asks, can I draw? I'm an okay drawer. I don't know if you guys know what directed drawing is, but my son likes to do directed drawing when you watch a YouTube video and then they kind of show you what to draw and you draw it based off that. So I'm okay at that, but I would say I'm average-ish. Someone asked who's next to Luka. That's actually a good question. I didn't, because they changed a lot of the lockers now because they traded so many guys. I'm not. It might be DFS. I will report back on who's in what locker spot. Michael D asks if I speak any other languages and how fluently. I could speak conversational Spanish and a little bit of Serbian, and those are my two, native / like parent languages. Late night gag is we're getting wild here, so I'm getting asked about languages. I'm getting asked about drawing. I'm enjoying it. So I can hold a little bit of a conversation in Serbian. I can hold more of a conversation in Spanish. It is actually something I'm like kind of embarrassed about, to be honest, because my mom's 100% Puerto Rican. My dad's 100% Serbian. I do partly blame them on not teaching me at a young age and like kind of forcing it on me. But I'm here now. I can't change it. I have taken some Serbian online like classes and lessons to kind of learn a little bit more. And I want to continue doing that. So, yeah. Narks, what up, Ethan? What was the dinner at Crypto tonight? It was tortillas, rice, beans, I think cilantro chicken, some type of marinade with the chicken, grilled chicken, and then beef. So good crypto dinner night. Okay, I this time I'm seriously going 5 more minutes. Just Eat Severo, can you rap? No, but that didn't stop me from trying. I was in a fraternity in college for a couple years, and during Hell Week, I had to rap, and from an embarrassment standpoint, it's probably the lowest I've ever felt in my life. Most embarrassing thing I've ever done. So, yeah. Hako, a little bit with Luka. So actually talking to the Slovenian reporter tonight, because so for some context with Luka's dad is Serbian. His mom is Slovenian. Like it depends on the culture, but a lot of cultures, it is like more so what your mom is dictates kind of how you're raised or so. He grew up in more of a Slovenian household. His dad moved to Slovenia. They spoke Slovenian, but his dad is Serbian. His dad speaks fluent Serbian. So it's like there are similarities between Slovenian and Serbian, but they are technically different languages despite the similarities. So I think we could probably, he could definitely speak more Serbian than me, but we could probably have a limited conversation in Serbian. But this reporter who knows him fairly well, has covered him for almost 10 years, says he does not speak fluent Serbian for what that's worth. Dark Galaxy asks if I'm able to disclose where everyone is. I could do that next time. I think Austin's in the same spot. So like Austin, again, if we're looking at it, like these are the sides, this is the back. Looking at the back, Austin's on the left side. He's always been there. Now that I'm thinking about it, DFS is in the corner, and I think he was still there today. DFS is there. Bronny's kind of in the middle on this side. So I'm not quite sure who's on. Maybe Max. Like I gotta, again, there's been a lot of turnover in the locker room. Now they have to do a new one for Mark Williams. So I'll let you guys know where all the lockers are. Harry Shinani, JJ, and LBJ didn't mention DK when asked about the trade. They did not. I've actually been a little surprised at like kind of the lack of, like, obviously with AD that there was a lot of talking him up, and JJ talked up Max, but like Dalton was a guy that he spoke glowingly about for so long. It was kind of interesting that no one talked him up. To be fair, no one mentioned him in terms of the question. With LeBron, it's like it's a zoo with LeBron, because there's like 7 cameras. We're in a tight quarters. He's next to the entrance to the shower. So there's only certain spots we could be. Everyone's in there to see LeBron, and everyone's elbowing each other. You're kind of like fighting for the space. So LeBron, it's kind of like the second. He was only asked one Mark Williams question, and then a few Luka questions, but no DK. With JJ, there's several Mark Williams questions, some Luka, LeBron, and no Dalton. So I think once the trade was official, he could have mentioned Dalton and at least given him a shout out. But maybe I'll ask if it's an appropriate time next availability. Kane Carter, do you ever joke with Jason Tiff that he looks like Pat Spencer? I had not honestly thought about it, but I do see it. I see it. User asked me, do I like balloons? No, I don't dislike them, but like I'm neutral on balloons. Okay, I'm about to. King Carter. I'll end it here. This is a good one. Art of War, yes, Vladi is Serbian. And I did a story on Jokic a few years ago and spoke with Vladi, and that was like a highlight for me. King Carter says, was there ever any crazy things you saw in locker rooms for X beef between players or something could gain traction, but you kept tucked for confidential reasons? Yes. The second we turn off the recorders, the players will say things that like would get them in trouble. And like there's the old adage, locker room talk. And there's certainly an element of that even in front of the media. Certain players sharing beliefs about things or conspiracy theories or whatever. That's another thing. I've never seen a physical altercation between players in the locker room. The closest was I was there for the Clippers Rockets whole situation and the tunnel saga. And like, that was just a wild evening with the Rockets. It wasn't a secret tunnel. There was this hallway that was in between the visitors locker room and the home locker room. Chris Paul knew about that hallway and he tried to bring them in through that. But it's that's probably the closest to like actually seeing like a fight or something. I think the players know that in front of the media, you gotta keep it a certain way, but definitely like a lot of things that like, praising a certain player and then right after kind of like trash talking them or completely saying like it's not true or whatever. But stuff like that unfortunately I cannot, disclose, but it is entertaining at times. Aaron, I'm ending with this one because it's 1:30 a.m. Why is Jovan still up? It's a good question. I need to go to sleep. For those of you on the West Coast or East Coast, you need to go to sleep as well. But I appreciate you all. Shout out to the late night gang, basically 1,000 people strong at 1:30 in the morning Pacific time on a Thursday night after the trade deadline. So this officially wraps up all the trade deadline coverage. We covered last night the Mark Williams trade, today the deadline and kind of just where the Lakers are at, and then tonight, of course, the Lakers Warriors game and some updates with Mark Williams and Luka. So tomorrow I'll be back with a new episode of Buha's Block. I'm going to have Crangus on. We are going to talk about the Luka trade, the Mark Williams trade, the Lakers trade deadline overall. We're going to talk about the offense. We're going to talk about the starting lineup, or we're going to talk about the ceiling for this group. So be on the lookout for that. New episode of Buha's Block, likely going to drop in the afternoon time. We're recording at 1 Pacific. I'm going to guess we go for about 45 to an hour, and then hoping to have it up by like 4 or 5 p.m. Pacific time. So be on the lookout for that. That's coming tomorrow. And yeah, Lakers get what you need day, so no practice. Then we'll play 1 p.m. on Saturday. So that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I will talk to you all tomorrow. As a reminder, for those who want to be a mod, drop it in the comment section on this video. Let me know, and I will add you. I could add you from just copying your username and putting you on the mod list. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and I thank you all for it. But get some rest, get some sleep. I certainly need it, and I will talk to you all very soon.